what's your secret? You got the kind of vibe that leaves one speechless. It could be model multitasking genius. Yeah, you got it all.
Welcome to another episode of Breakthrough Conversations with Rhoda and Company. This is where we explore real stories behind real leaders and leadership that pivots, the risks, the reinventions, and the breakthroughs. So today's guest, who I'm so honored to have, is someone many of you in the St. Louis OD network and in the OD space within St. Louis and probably beyond already know and respect Aaron Adams. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you.
Aaron is a seasoned leader in the startup and technology space. His career spans corporate America, executive consulting, entrepreneurship, and high growth startups. He currently serves as the Vice President of Professional Services at Lever Talent, where he leads teams that help organizations implement talent solutions and drive measurable business impact. So throughout his career, he has led professional services teams. He's built alignment strategies. He's advised organizations on engagement and change. And Aaron has built a career at the intersection of strategy, people, and growth. He also holds a BA in psychology from Michigan State, a master's in industrial organizational psychology from Wayne State. He is SHRM CP certified and PROSCI certified in change management. And beyond his professional work, he also plays a leadership role in the St. Louis OD network, which is where I come to know Aaron and been working side by side with him in the mentor program originally, and now on the executive committee for the OD network. And most recently, Aaron, you transitioned to overseeing the programs committee from the mentoring committee. He's done a lot of great work and bringing a lot of structure and depth to that mentor program. But today isn't just about titles. It's about the journey. And when Aaron and I were chit-chatting a few weeks now, the weeks go by so fast, I said I would love to talk to him more about his career and his journey. And he takes risk and he can pivot, and he's learned a lot of leadership lessons along the way. And I thought that our listening audience could benefit from hearing from a voice of Aaron. So Aaron, welcome to Breakthrough Conversations.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rhoda. It's great to be here. It's an honor.
Yeah, so you started with a background in qualitative research, data analysis, organizational benchmarking. What originally drew you in that direction?
Geez, how big of an origin story do we want? That's a great question. It's never linear, right? When we think about the paths we take. I initially, coming out of my undergrad, was going into grad school to be a clinical psychologist.
Okay.
I'm going to do this. Spent some time doing organizational research and twin studies, and I had some conversations with practitioners. I said, what's this look like? And what I got a sense of was I was going to be a mechanic for people. And I think with that, like we always joke about mechanics, right? Like once you take the car into the shop once, it's like forever and never ending cycle. And it just didn't sound that attractive. And so I had to like reverse engineer it in my mind. I was like, okay, well, what do I like? I was like, I like psychology. What do I know? Well, I know work. I've been working since I was like 14. What's the intersection? And coming out of Michigan State, they had a really good IO program. And I ended up going to Wayne State for a master's because I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this very applied route. I know work and I know psychology. So it was this intersection that brought me to it. And then in that, it was that blend of like people, analytics, systems. So that's what brought me to it. And then my first role coming out of grad school was working for Right Management. And I learned from really seasoned practitioners in there. So it kind of brought me there. It wasn't my intent initially, but learning along the way, I was like, I'm going to steer this car a little bit right here because I don't know if the path I was originally thinking was the one that was going to take me where I wanted to be.
Yeah, so it sounds like you had that passion, though, and you were able to identify a path that still allowed you to leverage your passion and merge it in some other areas more. The human aspect is always going to play a factor. You're always going to have to study us and work with us and understand how to work with people and meet them where they are and get things done. But to your point, the systems, it was at the intersection that attracted you.
Yeah. I like your passion comment. That is something
Yes.
I'm not short of, is passion. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would say
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
definitely played a role in there.
Right. So when you think back to your early leadership experiences, what shaped your leadership identity the most? And I guess I should also ask, how do you define your leadership identity?
Whew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what shaped it in the beginning, it was really observing what other leaders did.
Mm-hmm.
So the very first role that I had, I probably didn't even appreciate the richness of thing that was probably happening at that
Right.
moment. Because I worked at Right Management, we were really focused on executive assessment centers. So there
Mm-hmm.
were executives, and these were like immersive, like 2 to 3 day simulations that people would come into, and they would play the role of the executive in the office.
Mm-hmm.
And working in that, there were just a large number of executives coming in and executive consultants that were in that twilight of their career, had all the knowledge. So I really was just watching
Okay.
and observing. I had one project where I really had to look at the system that we were
Mm-hmm.
running, like get an understanding of all the work by talking to all the consultants,
Right.
and just seeing the behaviors and the routines and the way that they looked at data and the way that
Mm-hmm.
they made decisions and they incorporated the different aspects from the individual assessment to how they showed up in a simulation and made decisions around that. And then even seeing how
Right.
the participants went through it. Really, I just got to see a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
I had an idea of what it looked like.
Right.
And then as I've gone through my career, I think that's how we learn a lot. Is like we see
Mm-hmm.
leaders show up a certain way.
Right.
And for me, how that's shaped my identity is I've
Mm-hmm.
tried to, over the years, really just become more intentional
Mm-hmm.
around what I do.
Yes.
And we're not going to be right all the
Right.
time. But if we can be
Right.
more intentional about the way we want to show up and learn and reflect and iterate,
Mm-hmm.
so give myself some grace and try to be more intentional about the way we show up and communicate, and take more responsibility for that, and not say, hey, this is outside of my control. Really
Right.
just internalize the control and be like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you can control this.
Right.
Take responsibility for it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really been my identity because I've learned a lot along the way,
Right.
good and bad lessons that have kind of formed me and molded
True.
me in there.
And to your point, something you said when you said intentional, I wrote that down because that's one of my favorite words.
Mhm.
It made me reflect on the fact that while when we first start out in our careers, and especially in leadership roles, our early leadership roles, we are often not the same leader that we were in the beginning. To the point you just made, we've evolved and we learn over time. You must be intentional. We weren't thinking like that then. And even observing leaders back then, we didn't really know what was good behavior or leadership practice versus not either. We were just taking it all in. You learn that over time through trial and error. So to your
Mhm.
point, I've made some mistakes. There's some people that work for me. I want to apologize to them that work for me early when I stepped into leadership. I was never intentionally mean because that's just not who I am. But
Mhm.
I made a lot of mistakes. So but I learned from them. And
Mhm.
I've learned to be intentional about how I want to others to experience me and what I want to get out of the people and what I see in them and how I can help them reach their full potential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And And what I like about what you shared there is it
Mhm.
goes to that other piece around grace. That
Yes.
was one of the biggest lessons I learned over time, is
Hmm.
like extending grace to others, but
Yeah.
also to
To
ourselves. And it's
ourselves.
like, because we are learning, we're going to
Hmm.
fail. And that was probably some of the best feedback I had from a very talented leader who I knew
Hmm.
for some time.
Hmm.
And they were like, oh, what's one thing you can do? And they're like, oh, I wish I could lead with grace. I was like,
Right.
that's very powerful. And as
Hmm.
I get older, the appreciation for that statement deepens,
Yes.
a lot for it.
That's so true.
Mm.
So, Aaron, did you always see yourself in startup environments, or did that evolve over time as well?
Let's just say fit, right? I think, the more we keep getting data from the world, right? And it kind of sends a message to us.
Mhm.
Where do I fit? Or where do I want to be? And I think I didn't really know startups in the beginning part of my career. I think my career as an
Mhm.
IO at the time when I was going into it, there weren't like a lot of startups. Like that wasn't
Right.
the buzz. I mean,
Mhm.
nowadays they're all over the place. And it's great, when we think about the way startups can emerge. It's fit though. Like I got
Mhm.
enough signals from the environment. When we think about those corporate environments, there's a certain person who's going to fit really
Yeah.
well, and they're just going to
Yeah.
feel at home, and they're going to be successful, and they're going to feel like this is my calling.
Mhm.
And then the startups, that's a whole nother piece. And I
Right.
never saw myself there because I didn't know what it was. But once I experienced it and I felt it, it sent the signal back like, hey, you're
Mhm.
probably in the right place, right? At least
Right.
right now, right where you're
Right.
at. So
That's a good point for people who may be listening and who may be like early in their career or even mid or season. Is listening to the inner voice that lets you know if this is a good fit or not.
mhm.
And so, therefore, if you're listening, then you can be in alignment with what resonates with you and your purpose versus ignoring that and trying to fit yourself in an environment that really doesn't fit and then you're out of alignment.
Mhm.
That's a good point to pay attention to that. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, what are the biggest leadership differences between corporate environments and startups where it help you notice and pay attention to? Is this to fit this? I feel more at home in a startup than I do in a corporate setting.
Yeah. I think in the corporate setting, there's a lot of processes and practices they've already adopted that have made
Mm-hmm.
them great, right? Has
Right.
made the organization thrive, has created some competitive advantage
Mm-hmm.
that they've leaned into. And so there's a lot of systems that are working well.
Right.
And and in there, so if the systems are already good, you're not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily coming in there to create a system.
Right.
You might just be running, fine tuning, helping to think about, well, what this maybe we need to change this as we look forward,
Mm-hmm.
which puts more emphasis on what are the relationship dynamics that are
Right.
happening inside of the organization. And I think a lot of people they'll say like, and they call it it's like a bad word sometimes, like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
they're politically savvy. Well, I think being politically savvy in a larger organization that is an important,
Mm-hmm.
important competency or capability. And
Right.
when we think of the way we show up. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that is one distinct difference. Like it is,
Mm-hmm.
you're managing stakeholders, but you're also being cognizant of the needs. And
Yes.
so the stakeholder management and the way you navigate that from a political aspect in terms of making sure everybody's incorporated as you're navigating through the nuances of the organization adds a layer of complexity that is part of getting the work done, but really separate from the work, right? So you're
Right.
like kind of removed in a step, at least as you get into
Yes.
management. At least that's what I observed.
Mm-hmm.
And then in startups, it flips, right? You still have the responsibilities for management, but you're very close to the work.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing the work that keeps the doors open.
Yes.
You're
Yes.
doing the work that is touching the P&L. You're doing the
Mm-hmm.
work that is revenue. Like you're only a phone call away from a
Mm-hmm.
pipeline conversation or a
Mm-hmm.
revenue conversation. So you feel you feel the impact of your
Yes.
decisions very quickly. And so I think that's why it feels a little bit more chaotic because the signals you're so close to it.
I
If
see.
Yeah, so I think that's the difference in terms of like what I think
Mm-hmm.
you could thrive in a corporate environment,
Right.
that relationship management, political savviness, whereas in a
Mm.
startup environment, it is like you have so many signals coming in, you really got to know what is the critical move that
Right.
keeps the doors open or really
Mm.
gets that business moving, and doesn't, right? So,
Wow.
mhm.
That it sounds a little bit more high stakes. Yeah, in the startup.
True.
And some people thrive, i.e. you, in that type of environment. Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about it like that. What did consulting though teach you? How did it prepare you? I think it might have had some influence on how you settle in and which one is a good fit for you, corporate versus startup. How did consulting prepare you for being successful in this type of environment?
Oh man,
Mm.
so many ways. It was just the consultants I got to work next to. One
Mm-hmm.
of the consultants I worked with early days is still my mentor today.
Right.
And I mean just
Mm-hmm.
seeing the other consultants, understanding how they got to where they're at. Because again, they were like, multiple like very talented consultants that I worked with spent
Right.
years internally, and they were on that back half of their career. They said,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to consult. And right management, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
that's the talent management wing to Manpower, which
Yes.
the size and the scope. So consultant taught me a lot because I could see the behaviors and the approaches and the practices that were almost best in class in a lot of
Right.
ways. It also it also had me create an unrealistic expectation for other organizations I worked with thereafter. So I saw this mold and we saw executives coming in. I thought this was the norm, right?
Right.
This is the norm. Everybody should be showing up like this. And by no means were all the consultants
Mm-hmm.
perfect. But I think what they were displaying and showing in those executives coming in, it was a select
Mm-hmm.
sample that probably didn't represent the whole population of the workforce out there.
Right.
Uh, so in a good way, I could see the behaviors and things to aspire to. On the
Mm-hmm.
bad side, I probably held people very early in my career to an expectation that was not fair. I think
Right.
I
Right.
think that was where it brought me. And then just always keeping in mind, like
Mm-hmm.
as a consultant, they always, it's that cliche, like it depends. Well, why does
Mm-hmm.
it depend? It
Mm-hmm.
depends because there's a lot of practices in consulting where everything is data. We're questioning our assumptions. We're
Right.
rethinking things. Like, what's the context? Because as consultants, we bop around to different projects and
Mm-hmm.
different clients. So there's no one best way necessarily because it depends on the organization we're consulting with. And so
Mm-hmm.
that humbles you too, because even if you have a really good practice, you still need to be able to adjust the context of the situation to be able
Right.
to have the best solution for the clients or
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
project you're working
So true. So true.
on.
So what's one hard lesson you learned that shaped how you lead today?
When you think you have all the answers, that's when you're probably wrong. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the times where I've been really confident, almost overly confident, and I
Mm-hmm.
had the right answers were the times where I was like, yeah, yeah, did I? And I
Right.
think that's really shaped me because there's so much
Mm-hmm.
context that comes into play. And we're seeing that now with AI. Like your
Yes.
context is your capital, right? When we think about what is making these systems strong, when
Mm-hmm.
they have more context, well, I think that's no different in
Mm-hmm.
the world we work in. Things are not
Right.
linear, right? Things are not this or that. There is so
Mm-hmm.
much richness to it. So if you're assuming you already have the answer, you really have to ask yourself, do you have all the context to be confident on that answer,
Right.
that solution? And the times where I've been like really, really confident
Mm-hmm.
were the times where I should have probably asked a bit
Right.
fewer questions in there.
Right. That's a great one. That's a great one. Yeah, because I think a lot of people who are in leadership positions fall into that trap to think they have to have all the answers
Mm,
and then that the answers have to come from them. And
mm.
it's often not the truth. No, you just don't have to know. You have to know what questions to ask.
Right. The
Yeah.
questions are the answer. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
So many leaders struggle with knowing when to stay and when to pivot. How have you made those decisions?
Well, I probably stayed too long sometimes. Then I realize that then it's time to pivot later. And I think that's what it is. In the beginning, that's what it is. I think we
Mm-hmm.
learn through a lot of the failures. And when we stay in things too long, feel back to that fit piece.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how'd you know? Like, it's fit because you're getting these
Yeah,
signals.
you
And
do.
if we can convince ourselves of pretty much anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when we're being very honest with ourselves and we're centered and we're just in a comfortable spot and we're listening to
Mm-hmm.
the situation and all the signals that are coming in, I think we can make better choices.
Yes.
And I've only known when to pivot after being in times where I should have pivoted,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
I just learned and said, hey, that's the signal. Did you feel
Right.
that? Yeah, you stayed too long. Like,
Yes.
hey, just remember that. Don't force
Mhm.
that, but be honest to some of those more intuitive hunches that we get.
Right.
It's not that intuition should guide all decisions, but
Mm-hmm.
intuition in itself is a signal that we need to
Right.
appreciate. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's one of the things that staying too long has taught me to pivot
Yes.
at other times in there.
Yes. I've had that scenario recently in the situation. I saw the signals a year and a half before
Mhm.
it got to that point, and I just got too comfortable.
Mhm.
So yeah, that is so true, paying attention to those. So what advice would you give Aaron to a seasoned leader who may be feeling restless?
Yeah, I mean, so first I'd start with a question like, why? Like,
Mhm.
be honest with yourself. Like, why are you feeling restless?
Right.
And use some of those things that we
Mhm.
know as consultants or as practitioners. We like to challenge other people. Did you ask
Right.
yourself five whys? Like, take it deep.
Yep.
Take it out and be honest. I mean, I think
Mhm.
that the introspection and if you have people close to you who know you really
Mhm.
well, have conversations with them too. People that can give you some more objectivity,
Right.
get you outside of your own head. Why are you feeling
Mhm.
restless? What's the context? What's the reason? And I think that's what it starts with. Like
Right.
get an understanding of what's going on. Is it a dynamic or a relationship, within the workplace or
Right.
within your life that's making you restless and not so much of like getting ready to switch jobs. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think some people don't look at the system and they make a decision and then and they reflect later like, oh, that was probably
Right.
maybe not the right driving force. So I think we really have to take an honest look, and that creates space, right? You got to create
Right.
space. If you're restless, find some space, take some time, find a way to look
Mhm.
on the outside in, and also a little inward too.
Inside
Like,
out. Yeah.
yeah.
That's so true. What's a leadership practice you believe more leaders should adopt?
Mm. Yeah, I think my default answer is always like empathy.
Mhm.
I think we need to have more
Mhm.
empathy, but I think empathy's hard. I think to really empathize
Mhm.
with the intricacies and the complexity of like an experience that somebody's had that really
Mhm.
formed them that is can be a traumatic experience potentially
Yeah.
is tough. And so I think compassion,
Mhm.
like being a compassionate leader and really caring and
Yeah.
wanting to help,
Mhm.
I think that's the one where I don't think it's going to lead you astray as a leader. If
Right.
you have more compassion, is that going to be
Mhm.
a bad thing? I'm not
Right.
saying to be more compassionate in all your decisions. I'm just
Right.
saying have more compassionate for the people
Mhm.
that you serve. And I
Right.
think, and I think that service mentality as leaders, they do, right? They make
Mhm.
decisions in service of the organization, and the organization is a group of people,
Right.
and they need to have more compassion for the
Mhm.
people that they serve.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. You can't go wrong with having compassion be a part of your natural leadership style. Doesn't mean that you're going to not hold people accountable. It doesn't mean that you're going to allow it to influence or decide every decision for you. But to the point you made, having that compassion, I call it human centric leadership. Um, it can go a long way.
Mm,
People will want to follow you. They will because they see that you have that compassion. And also, it kind of creates this environment and culture of safety and trust. And
mm,
so, when people are in an environment where they feel safe, they can perform at the top of their game. They're not afraid to fail, they're not afraid to make mistakes. Yeah, it's a win win. That's a great thing for leaders to adopt. Thank you for
yeah,
sharing it.
yeah, I
Yeah.
love that safety comment.
Yeah. So we're
Absolutely.
going to transition to rapid fire round, and I'm going to ask these questions. I just want you to hear what's your initial thought. And one is corporate scale or startup speed?
Startup speed.
Startup speed, because that's where you feel your match.
Mm,
And then the one leadership skill that would never go out of style.
mm. I mean, strategic thinking.
Yes, so true. If you could give your 25-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Be consistent.
Hmm. Be consistent. And a book that shaped your leadership thinking.
Mm. It's not a leadership book,
Hmm.
but I think of Process Consultation by Edgar Schein, right, as a consultant.
Okay.
And I think
Process.
of that, yeah, just because the principles
Hmm.
are straightforward.
Right.
It's very pragmatic.
Hmm. Hmm. Awesome. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for sharing and with me and in my listening audience about your journey. I think you're very inspirational, and I love your risk taking. Like I've known you probably now for 10 years, and I've seen you pivot a few times in and out of roles. And I love the way you think and the questioning of your personality. You're always questioning what's next, how should we do this, what should we be focused on. all things that I've learned from observing you. So thank you for reminding us that leadership isn't linear, it's layered.
Absolutely.
And your journey shows us that growth requires courage, that pivots aren't failures, they're refinements, and that leadership isn't about the title you hold, but the impact you create in every season. So, to our listeners, whether you're in corporate America, whether you're building something from scratch, consulting independently, or quietly wondering if it's time for you to move on to something new, let this episode remind you that your reinvention is not a risk, it's a leadership skill. Until next time, this is Rhoda reminding you that your breakthrough begins with the courage to grow. Thank you for listening.
Hey, what's your secret? You got the kind of vibe that leaves you speechless. It could be model multitasking genius. Yeah, you got it all. Hey, what's your story? A kick-ass mom and 40 under 40. A soccer practice in your high heel glory. Yeah, you do it all.